What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. This time after dark. We're recording this right after the first round of the NFL draft. So we're going to go ahead and get into this one. My name is Will. This is my co host, Eric. Before we get started, Eric, you got anything for the people?
I'm just excited to bring this one to you guys. This has been a long time in the making. Everything that we've kind of been talking about has been leading up to the NFL draft, finally getting these landing spots. And it was a crazy night. We got 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. The first 14 players off the board were all offensive players. So I'm definitely excited to see what this means for the first round of our rookie drafts, what kind of implications it's going to have. But yeah, we'll talk about all of that.
All right, absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. In the background, we got NFL Draft Tracker. And let's go ahead and group these three together because these are the three guys we've been talking about this whole offseason. With picks 1, 2, and 3, we've got Caleb Williams going to the Chicago Bears, Jaden Daniels going to the Washington Commanders, and Drake May ending up with the New England Patriots. How do we feel about all of these landing spots for these three quarterbacks right here since we've been talking about them this whole offseason?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb is obviously the easiest one to talk about. It's been set in stone for a good long time. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but at the 9 spot, they took Roma Dunze there at Chicago as well. So, like, this landing spot couldn't be any better. Caleb is in a tier of his own, like we've been talking about, but maybe even more so now, just solidified with the ridiculous amount of talent around him at the receiver position there in Chicago. So, I absolutely love that. I think Jaden Daniels stays in that top 4 picks of the rookie draft. I don't think he really moves out of that. But Drake May, questionable.
Yeah.
I think this is something that we've been talking about the draft process and where we would rank these guys mostly based on player evaluation. We haven't really tried to project landing spot too much. But this is something that I think we've kind of talked about and we've seen coming that if Drake May ended up with the Patriots, it's going to drop him a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's not the most ideal landing spot, but there's a lot of question marks with this new look sort of Patriots team that we're getting to now that Bill Belichick's gone. So there's a possibility maybe things end up being a good spot for him, but traditionally speaking for New England, it's not going to be great for Drake May, at least to start out, but he's got some
Yeah.
room to surprises for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about what Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry is like his top options to throw to there. It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, not a very inspiring group at all, to be honest, but, we're hoping for the best. Jaden Daniels landed exactly where we kind of hoped he would. You guys see the hat right
Yep.
here. We're Commanders
Hmm.
guys ourselves, so hopeful for that. And like you said, Caleb Williams landing in a very good spot for a number one overall pick. So pretty much world's at his fingertips right now. It's just what he plans on doing with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can transition into some wide receiver talk because the big three all go off the board in the top 10. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze all go off, I guess, before pick 9 even. Does anything change for you based on landing spot, or are they still kind of shaken out in relatively the same order, at least in comparison to each other?
So out of this group of three, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's at the number one right now. I feel like pretty
Yep.
definitively. With Malik Neighbors landing with the Giants, this one was kind of disappointing. Obviously, he's attached to Daniel Jones for what is at least the short term. We got no real idea what they're doing at the quarterback position, but
No.
long term, I still feel like Malik Neighbors is going to pay out. It's just going to take a
Yep.
little bit of time for them to get there. And Roma Dunze, like you said, landing with the Chicago Bears with Keenan Allen, who's starting to get up there in age and could be, not with the team for even too much longer. I like that pickup right there for them too. So for me, Roma Dunze and Malik Neighbors got a little bit closer in terms of how I feel like, production wise, but in terms of the rankings, I'm still keeping it MHJ, Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze.
Yeah, so in terms of rankings with these guys, I completely agree with you. I have MHJ 1, Neighbors 2, Adunze 3. I think Marv actually separated himself a little bit more from Neighbors, whereas we were kind of talking about them in the same tier. I'm not maybe as put off as you mentioned by Neighbors' landing spot with the Giants. Obviously, you don't love
Hmm.
Daniel Jones being his quarterback for the foreseeable future, but I do think with that wide receiver core there, um, he's got a really high floor. Like he's probably going to hit 140, if not 150 targets in his first year because he's clearly by far and away the best option there. even if they're not the highest efficiency or the best accuracy in terms of the targets that he's getting. Um, but yeah, I think that separates them a little bit. And I'm a little bit worried about Adunze. Like, I think long term, him and Caleb is going to be a great pairing. But are you worried at all that that's kind of going to be like a JSN 2.0 in terms of landing spot and what that means for his dynasty value in the short term?
No, I absolutely would agree with that. Like right now, he is the clear number three option right there because Keenan Allen, he's still showing us a lot. Obviously, DJ Moore had a great year last year, so he's walking into a spot where he is the number three. And it's going to take a little while before he does get his opportunity to kind of shine through. So it's tough between the two of them who I would prefer to have out of the two. I think, like you said, I think it's still Malik Neighbors for me. I like the
Yeah.
prospect more, and I feel like over time the Giants will end up getting it together in some capacity. But like you said, he is the clear number one there. But with Roma Dunze, it's going to be a waiting game for sure.
Yeah. So I made the comparison. I do want to at least note, like, Adunze gets picked top 10. He's the number 9 overall pick, whereas JSN was what, 20? So that's a considerable difference. But I do think that it is going to take a little while for Adunze to get going and be that top tier um, asset in terms of production. His value might hold just because of what people think of him as a prospect. But for me, at least in rookie drafts, I'm taking Neighbors fairly substantially earlier than Adunze just because I know he's going to produce right away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, like you said, he's going to hit the ground running out there because there aren't too many other options.
Yeah. Um,
Looking at the next set of players we've got up here, we got a couple quarterbacks off of them. One of them a surprise, one of them not so much a surprise. Michael Penix going 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins himself also shocked about this pick. Apparently, he had no idea that they were going to do this. How do you feel about this one right here for Michael Penix?
I mean, is this the worst draft pick we've seen? Since I don't know when. Like, I don't know what they could have possibly been thinking. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it just feels like a bad move on all fronts. Like you already signed the guy, signed him to major money, and you kind
Yeah.
of expect him to be, the starter for you for a while. This is the 8th overall pick. I don't really think I saw too many mock drafts with Michael Penix going in the top 10, top 15 even. This was an opportunity I feel like they could have traded back, gotten more assets, and still picked Michael Penix if they really wanted to pick Michael Penix.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is weird. One, I totally agree. They could have traded back and done the same thing. Um, but like, yeah, you just signed Kirk Cousins. He's got guaranteed money through the first 2 years, and he signed. What is it? Is it a 3-year contract with guaranteed through the first two?
I believe 3 years guaranteed through the first two.
And Michael Penix is about to turn 24, so you're talking about he's not going to see the field until he's 27, unless you have some other weird plan with Kirk Cousins after you sign. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. It sucks for what maybe could have been some dynasty value for Penix. I mean, he gets drafted top 10, so the draft capital is there, and if you want to trust that, then I don't necessarily blame you, but also, as much as we want to say that Dynasty is more of a long term game, people get antsy, and he's going to have to sit, I would think, for at least 2 years, right?
Yeah, and I would like the record to show also it was a 4-year contract for 180 million, and it included a no trade clause. So
What are we talking about?
I don't understand what this move was right here.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, this was rough. This was rough. Um, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I guess in terms of just dynasty information, Michael Penix is a backup quarterback for the foreseeable future. If he ends up getting his opportunity, like Eric said, he's going to be at a good age. He's going to be somewhere around 27 years old before he really gets his opportunity as an NFL starter. It's tough to buy stocks on Michael Penix right now.
Yeah, like, I want to say, once he gets the job, it'll be a good landing spot. But who knows what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years? I don't know. What's the roster going to look like? What's the coaching staff going to look like?
Yeah, they've
Things could
already
really shake up based on this pick.
they've already gone through a lot just in these last 2 years, just with the way the teams
Yeah.
looked. So yeah, I don't understand this move right here. But I guess to move to the one that we did see coming more so, the 10th overall pick, Minnesota Vikings moved up. They moved up one spot from the 11 to get J.J. McCarthy right here. I kind of just I don't love this pick because I don't love J.J. McCarthy. But at the end of the day, it's a great landing spot for J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, he's got great weapons around him. So, all around, this is just a positive move. I guess at this point now, it's just up to us to see who J.J. McCarthy is as a player, finally. I guess now we'll finally get to see what he can do. But what do you think about this one right here?
Well, I want to pose a question to you because this is really interesting to me, and I think I know my answer, but it's close. Uh, who would you rather have in a Dynasty rookie draft now? J.J. McCarthy or Drake May?
I would rather have J.J. McCarthy right now if I had to pick between
Yeah,
the two.
me
Absolutely.
too. This is something I wish we had. I wish we had brought this up because this is something I was considering. In the last couple days before the draft, with all the talk and all the connection of J.J. McCarthy to the Vikings, and with what it seemed like to be Drake May being picked third overall, we could see this coming. We could see this coming. Um, I, I don't know. Drake May would have been a top four, top five rookie pick. I think he falls just outside of that now. Like let's talk about the top. I don't know, 6 or 7 of the guys that we've already discussed so far on the list.
Mm-hmm.
How would you rank them for dynasty rookie drafts?
As of right now, Michael Penix dead last.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. After that, I would probably take a look at Drake May coming up right after that.
Okay.
Um, Based on situation, well, if we're looking at it from purely a fantasy standpoint, it's gonna have to go J.J. McCarthy next for me, then Jaden Daniels,
Mm-hmm.
then Caleb Williams. Just because Jaden Daniels does have that rushing floor that comes along with it as well. Not saying J.J. McCarthy doesn't, but it's not really like something that's mainly in his wheelhouse. So at least for the
Yeah.
guys we've talked about so far, that's how I would probably rank that group.
Yeah. Yeah. Caleb, Daniels, McCarthy, May, Penix.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. But yeah, I mean, he like this is another fantastic landing spot, similar to what we talked about with Caleb. He gets to go. McCarthy gets to go play with the best wide receiver in the league, in Justin Jefferson. He gets Jordan Addison, a great number two. Eventually, T.J. Hawkinson's going to be healthy. They got a good offensive line, great head coach. We have all the question marks in the world about J.J. McCarthy, but there's not too many question marks about where he landed.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is just the ideal situation for a young quarterback trying to get used to the NFL, just having the best, weapons and toys he could have around him. But I guess to sort of extend this conversation, just because we're looking at the 12th overall pick right here,
Yeah,
Mr. Bo Nix, where would he
your
slot
guy.
at? Yeah, my guy. Absolutely love seeing him get 12th overall draft capital. That's amazing for him going forward. And to the Denver Broncos, who were very much in need of a quarterback. I believe that quarterback room was Zach Wilson, Ben DiNucci, and Jared Stidham. So
Yeah.
we've got Bo Nix,
Yeah.
who's probably going to survive as the man on top of that pile of whatever you want to call that. But when we're looking at the rankings of quarterbacks here, obviously we know we have Drake May down here, second to last, and then we have J.J. McCarthy. Do you see Bo Nix in this situation slotting in right in between those two? Because that's kind of where I see him shaking out in those rankings as well. Or do you see him
So I
even
like the
slightly ahead of McCarthy?
I I do not. I think we're gonna disagree here, and that's okay. Bo
Okay.
Nix is your guy, and I could stand to be wrong here for sure. I'm still taking him after May. I'm taking
Okay.
him millions of miles ahead of Penix, obviously. Um, but yeah, I would still take McCarthy and May ahead of him. I think there's a good argument that this isn't. uh, It's a decent landing spot. Sean Payton has put together, even when it's not been Drew Brees, good, productive quarterback play. We saw that at the end of the Russell Wilson era with those last few weeks. We've seen that with Teddy Bridgewater. We've seen that with Jameis Winston. We've seen him put together guys that might not be the best quarterbacks, but have good fantasy production. So I think there's potential for that. But I don't know. The team makeup around him, the weapons surrounding him are questionable for sure. And I'm just not as in on Knicks as you are.
No, and that's absolutely fair. For me personally, I think I would have him right there in between the two, just in terms of how I feel like short-term utility is going to look for both of them. Like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
weapons that Bo Nix has around him, they're, in my opinion, considerably better than what Drake
Oh
May has
yeah,
right now. But at the same
no, I
time,
agree.
there's plenty of time for that to change. But like you said, we're kind of just splitting hairs right here at this point. But I do think that, Bo Nix landing here for the Denver Broncos, he should have time because this team is probably going to be bad for a little bit, or at least somewhere in that weird middle ground. So he should have some time to at least develop, and we can find out what he has in store for
Yeah.
this team. So for me personally, he lands right there. I can see how he lands right underneath May for you, and it makes sense to me. So I like that.
All right, so that rounds out all of the quarterbacks, right? Is that all six of them?
Yep, that is everybody right there.
And that leads us into the 13th pick, a surprising one, at least to me. The Raiders take best player available. I don't think it's a bad pick for them necessarily, but for fantasy, it's weird. They got Brock Bowers. What does this do to you, or do to him in rookie drafts for you?
This just absolutely tanked all of my Michael Mayer stocks.
That's true.
Yeah, but I mean, otherwise for fantasy, I'm not too upset about this move. Obviously, I think they wanted to address the quarterback position in this draft, but things kind of shook out a little bit differently than they expected. So I guess we're rolling with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell this year, whatever it is that ends up coming out of that.
Yeah.
So short term for Brock Bowers, I'm not super optimistic, but going forward from here on, I am super optimistic. I think he's still gonna have a solid season. I think Gardner Minshew is competent back there, and they'll find some success. But at the same time, rookie year may not be as pretty as we'd like to see for a guy like Brock Bowers, but future long term, I think things are looking up. I think it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to the quarterback situation and what they do to answer that in the future, because I don't think they have the long term answer on the roster right now.
No.
I've seen people look at this from a bunch of different ways. The Twitter reactions were funny to me. Some people are like, "This is Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, him and Michael Mayer together." I
Hopefully
don't see
not.
that. Well, hopefully it doesn't play out exactly how that went down. But in terms of what they did on the field, I don't see that happening. Devonte Adams still the number one target. Jacoby Myers proved to be quite good last year. It seemed like Michael Mayer was on the cusp of a breakout, but Brock is better than him. I think there's a chance that Brock gets used as a slot receiver, or they run a bunch of 12 personnel, so they could be on the field at the same time. But there's just with this quarterback play and the type of offense that they showed us that they wanted to be last year, there's not enough volume to support all of them.
It is wild that on back-to-back years you're going to get a tight end in the second round and a tight end in the first round. But I mean, hey,
Yeah.
Raiders gonna Raiders. If there's one thing they're gonna do, so it makes sense. It always makes sense in the end.
Wouldn't have been shocked if it was Xavier Worthy. Just take the fastest guy on the board.
Yeah,
It
honestly,
could
we've
have been.
we've literally seen them do that before. So,
Yeah.
all right, moving
But
down
yeah,
to
let's
the
let's
next.
keep talking about landing spots, and then we can finish out so that you guys know. We'll go through all of the guys that have been drafted and put them in order and how we would take them in rookie drafts. But who? I guess it's Brian Thomas Jr. is the next pick here.
Yep, 23rd overall, Brian Thomas Jr. to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I think we've seen this mocked a few times, and honestly, I wasn't super surprised to see the landing spot for him. And I think it fits, honestly. He's going to be the guy
Mm-hmm.
who's going to stretch the field for them. He's going to be that deep target guy they're kind of missing out on right now. And he
Yeah.
complements Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk almost perfectly. So I see this as a great landing spot for him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I do think there's a little bit of volume concerns. I think Christian Kirk, at least in the short term, is going to continue to be the wide receiver one. Evan Ingram was heavily targeted, one of the highest volume, if not, I think he was the highest volume tight end in terms of receptions in the NFL last year. Um, so he might not be a high volume guy to start, but I think it's a great pick for the team. I think it's going to help that offense. I think Trevor Lawrence stocks are up a little bit with this move. Um, yeah, this is something that we expected. I don't think it's like a needle mover in either direction. I think he fits nicely into that late first round conversation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think there's really too much more to add to that one right there.
Yeah.
Moving to the next player that we have off the board. At 28th overall, we've got Xavier Worthy to the Kansas City Chiefs, who once again traded up to get their guy at wide receiver,
Yeah.
second year in a row. We kind of saw this coming a little bit. We've seen this mocked a couple times. And we were like, it'd be funny
We've
if they
talked
just
about it.
try to go get the next Tyreek Hill for their team. And it looks like
Yeah.
that's kind of what they're trying to do here, drafting the fastest guy in NFL Combine history. How did you feel about this pick? Because me personally, I saw it, I thought it was cool, but at the same time, I was like, I'm still a little, shaky on it.
Same boat. Yeah. Completely agree. Like one, from an NFL perspective, I was also shocked because the Bills traded back and allowed for this to happen. Like I think for the Chiefs as a team, I think this is great. I think what he brings to an NFL offense and how that spaces the field for them is going to be huge. But in terms of him as a fantasy asset, we still have to see what Rashee Rice's legal situation ends up being. But I anticipate him being the wide receiver one. I feel like Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, Marquise was my comp. Like I thought that Xavier Worthy was kind of like a poor man's Marquise Brown. It seems like a role redundancy to me. I'm not sure how they're going to work out volume wise there. And then obviously Travis Kelsey's still there. So I don't have a high hopes for year one fantasy production, but I do think it's good for the Chiefs at least.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those guys who's going to be a lot of trade bait in terms of just players for a while. He's going to have pretty high
Yeah,
stock just because he's a really fast guy that plays for the Chiefs. But I don't
yeah.
know what that's going to turn into for him. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the last two picks of the first round. Two guys that I don't know if anybody had them on their bingo cards for end of the first round picks, but we've got
Yeah.
Ricky Pearsall out of Florida going to the San Francisco 49ers, which is a little scandalous. And we got Xavier Leggett going to the Carolina Panthers, who traded up for this pick, traded back into the first to get this. So for these two, what do we feel about this right here? Because we saw that they were shopping the two wide receivers over in San Francisco. Do we feel like this is sort of a stamp on that?
It it's hard to say. I feel like it'd be weird for them to take another one if one of them wasn't on the move, but also it seemed like they were shopping either one of those guys to move up in the first. So they didn't. You know what I mean? Like it's confusing about the way that it turned out, but also why would you take another receiver when you have Debo, potentially Ayuk if you're going to re-sign him, and Kittle and McCaffrey out of the backfield? Like you're probably not going to maintain all those guys on the roster.
Yeah, it almost doesn't make sense to do that unless you're planning on moving one of them out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, be on the lookout for that, especially tomorrow with all these, day two picks flying around. There very much could be a trade coming up soon. I've seen a
And
lot of Brandon Ayuk connected to the Commanders as well, but pairing him up with Jaden Daniels, sort of reunion there. So there
yeah,
may be some stuff to look out for there on that.
potentially that would be very interesting. But in terms of what it means for Ricky Pearsall, if that were to happen, if one of those two leaves, how do you feel about his potential year one production and what that means going forward?
I think year one production could look pretty good for Ricky Pearsall. I mean, both guys were extremely involved last year. Juwan Jennings even saw a good amount of involvement. George
Yeah,
Kittle, spotty here and there, but at the times when he was involved, super heavily involved, and they were able to get the ball to him. I think Ricky Pearsall is one of those players who's kind of versatile and can also get the ball out to him in multiple different ways. So I think he's just the guy who's going to fit really well into a Kyle Shanahan offense, to be honest with you.
he's like the perfect weapon for them. I'm surprised to see him go in the first round, but in terms of fit, assuming one of those other receivers leaves, I think this is a really good spot for him.
Yeah, they went and got their guy 100%.
Yeah.
And then looking at Xavier Leggett, a guy we've kind of been not trashing, but at the same time not super optimistic on, going at the back end of this first round. How did you feel about this one right here and him going to the Carolina Panthers?
I mean, the landing spot isn't shocking at all. They've been talking about picking him at 33, the first pick in the second round, for what seems like a long time at this point. I'm not shocked that that's what ended up happening. I just don't like Leggett that much, and I don't think he fits what they need. Obviously they got Deontay, so they have a separator, but I think they need more of him. And
Hmm.
Leggett doesn't really fit that mold. He's a big body field stretcher, but I mean, is he just another Jonathan Mingo? Like, I'm concerned that he might be.
Yeah, I think in terms of how he profiles, it's definitely looking that way, that he's going to lean more towards, the Mingo side of things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he should get a lot more opportunity than we saw Jonathan Mingo get. I think that he walks in. Obviously, this is going to be Deontay Johnson's sort of offense, but at the
Yeah.
same time, to have him as the number two to a guy like that may not be the worst thing for him to have him alongside with him. He's not just out there
Yeah.
by himself at the very least.
No, I think that's fair. Um, but yeah, we're pushing 12:30 East Coast time. We're tired. It's been a long day. Let's give the people our immediate rankings. Obviously, take these with a grain of salt. We haven't had a ton of time to think about it. And after the draft, we're going to be doing tons and tons of videos on exactly how these guys shake out. But if you had it your way, talk me through, of the guys that are drafted, where they're going to shake out for you.
So first overall stays the same. We got Caleb Williams staying right there at that spot. Second
Agreed.
overall, I think that's going to go to MHJ. Still landed
Yep.
with the Cardinals. Great landing spot right there. When we're looking at third overall, I think a lot of people are going to lean towards Jaden Daniels now. It was kind of unclear before, but I think it's really solidified as Jaden Daniels at this point. At the fourth overall, most likely, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Malik Neighbors here. I think that's a great spot for him right there. If we're
Yep.
looking at the fifth overall, I think a lot of people are going to lean towards Romo Dunze at this point now. I think there
Okay.
may be a lot of leaning towards him. When I'm looking at other spots here, the fifth and sixth, I'm a little shaky in between Drake May and JJ McCarthy here. I do
Mm-hmm.
feel like JJ McCarthy is the guy who should go first, so I'm more willing to put him at the five, and then Drake May sitting there at the six, and then Brock Bowers right after that at the seven.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Let's
yeah,
break it up there. Let's take a break. I fully agree with you. Through what, the first four: Caleb, Marv, Daniels, Neighbors.
right.
Yeah. And those have been the top four that we've been talking about. Not necessarily the exact order that we've been talking about. We had Neighbors at 3, Daniels at 4, but either way, the top four remain the same after we get these landing spots. I like it. Completely agree with you. I'm a little bit more nervous about Adunze year one. Um, I'm not like, I love the landing spot. I love that he's paired with Caleb Williams for the foreseeable future, and I think long term that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what his market value might be after this year, with him being third in the pecking order, I think we could see it drop a little bit. And so for me, I want to take the security of the quarterbacks in a super flex league. So I would put McCarthy and May there at the 5 and 6.
Okay, so McCarthy and May at the five and six. Who are we looking at for the seven?
And then I got a Dunze and Bowers to round out the top 8.
Okay, so when we're taking a look at the nine, what are we thinking there?
I got your boy Bo Nix.
Yeah, I think that's a smart move right there. Guy who's in the starting
Yeah.
spot. Okay, so we're looking at the 10 now.
And then we start looking at these later picked wide receivers. Debatable where you want to put Penix in there, but for me, I think it would go BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. at the 10, Worthy at 11,
Mm-hmm.
Pearsall 12, and then, two guys that I'm avoiding, Penix and Leggett at 13 and 14 ish.
Yeah, that's a placeholder, 13 and 14, till we see some more people get drafted, because they're going to fall probably a little bit further back than that.
Okay, so I know we talked about him already, but like, Penix got drafted top 10. He went 8th overall. How much weight does that hold for you, considering he's going to have to sit? Like, is he worthy of being potentially back end first, early second, or does he plummet?
I think he falls somewhere mid-second, mid to late second, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because that's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see too much of like you said, a positive road to him actually getting some starting time out there.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree. And then are there any like clear tier breaks in there that we need to note, you think?
I think that there is a clear tier break somewhere around like JJ McCarthy, if that makes any sense. Like obviously you got the top guys at the top with MHJ and Caleb Williams. I feel like they're in their kind of own range up
Yep.
there. Then you've
Agreed.
got, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. I feel like they're in a similar tier. But then when you move after that, you kind of got J.J. McCarthy, in my opinion, kind of sitting by himself. And
Okay.
then you move into like Drake May and Roma Dunze and then getting into everybody else down there.
Yeah, so Caleb Marv sit up there by themselves. I agree. Daniel's neighbors probably in a tier by themselves. Where I think,
Neighbors and then Daniels.
well, no, I just mean like McCarthy might have maybe that's not a clear tier break, but close to it. But then yeah, I think McCarthy, May, Adunze, Bowers make up a solid tier below that. Um, does Nix belong in that tier for you, or is he a tier down?
Nix is kind of a wild card for me, but I would kind of feel comfortable putting him in that mix. I think he's a guy who's going to jump in and immediately get a lot of playing time. I think we're going to see where
Yeah,
Bo Nix is pretty early on in his career at the very least.
no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Um, yeah, I think we broke that down pretty well. I hope you guys agree. Obviously, it's late, and we're just trying to get this video out to you guys ASAP. But yeah, anything you wanna talk about before we wrap this thing up?
Nah, just know that this stuff is fluid. This is literally just
Oh yeah,
based off of the first round, so we still got a lot of
yeah,
guys who are coming off the board, a lot of different landing spots, and we're gonna try to keep that updated. I guess throughout the weekend, at some point, we will update you guys again on what these rankings are. So stay tuned for that. So make sure you do all that great YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you know exactly when we drop that video. It should be a pretty good one. And also hit that like button. It's absolutely free and it's the best way to get our stuff out there into the YouTube algorithm. But Eric, you got anything else for the people before we get out of here?
yeah, man. Just check the links down in the description below. Join the Discord. I think you guys will love it. We got a great community over there. Support our sponsors. Do Numbers, Choice Music Group. We got discount codes. We got links to the apparel. We got links to the music, all the good stuff. As always, we're gonna end this with another clip of music from Choice Music Group. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you guys stuck with us all the way till the end, as always, we love you, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.
Chris.